How you doing, guys? Good evening. Tomato sauce in here. And one question I get asked a lot, and that I see asked a lot in the Discords, is simply, how do you set up your macros for an arms warrior, for a fury warrior, for a protection warrior in the pre-patch and going into Lich King? It's kind of a complex class because warrior has 3 different stances, right? So you have your battle stance, your defensive stance, and your berserker stance, and you have abilities that are specific to each of those specific stances. So what I want to do is just run through my macros for arms and fury. We set them up a little bit different for protection, but we'll get to that later on. Let's just start right away. Now, the first thing I want to do is initially go over a very simple macro, like my Mortal Strike macro, show you what each of these lines does, and then we'll make a macro together. Because I do like to have a start attack in all of my, main attack abilities in pre-patch and Lich King, especially with sudden death procs. We get a ton of executes. You're hitting this button a lot, and I notice that my melee attacks will kind of fall off if I go to lead into another target with execute. So we're actually going to make an execute macro together. But first, let's go into what this show tooltip does. It's pretty simple. It'll literally just show the tooltip of the ability. I'll move my camera here, and you can see, right? So when I hover over the macro, it'll tell you what Mortal Strike does, shows the tooltip for that ability. Pretty simple. Then you're going to see Start Attack. What this does is it actually starts your white swings on any mob that you engage. So I always have that as the first line in any attack ability macro. Then you're going to see /cast Mortal Strike. This is just us using the Mortal Strike ability. And then you're going to see a cheeky little one-liner here, /cancelaura Blessing of Protection. My friends like to bot me a lot because I do a lot of damage and I pull a lot of threat. But, high risk, high reward, right? I'm canceling that bop instantly. So you bop me, I can't do any damage when I'm bopped. I'm canceling that bop. Now, if it's an arena, I'm a little bit smarter, a little bit more intelligent about when I cancel the bop. But I do like to have this cancelaura Blessing of Protection in my Mortal Strike, so I can make that decision on when I want to take my bop off. So now let's get right into making a macro together, right? So I've actually used up all of my warrior slots. So what I will do here is just go to the general macros, and I'll make a new macro. I'm just going to call it Exe for execute, and you're going to see I'll keep the question mark icon here, so I don't have to go digging around looking for the execute icon. So the first thing we're going to do is show tooltip. Then we're going to /start attack, because that's what we're missing in our execute macro. Then we're just going to /cast execute. Now, execute requires battle stance or berserker stance. So something I do like to do, since I like to be in battle stance a lot, I'm actually going to /cast battle stance on this macro. So that it puts me back in battle stance if I'm not at the mob yet, essentially. Or if I try to execute and I'm in defensive stance because somebody's low. If I hit the macro the first time, you can see I'm in berserker stance right now. If I hit this macro the first time, it's going to put me in battle stance, and then it'll execute the target. Now I run Glyph of Execution and Tactical Mastery because I'm a kebab beast. So I always have enough rage to get an execute out. I prefer battle stance over berserker stance because you take more damage in berserker stance. My crit chance is already really high, and I prefer that extra 10% armor penetration that you get out of battle stance. Now let's go a little bit further, and we'll go into my heroic strike macro, because this is another nice one that you can get a lot of value out of, especially playing kebab or fury, anything dual wield really. So you're going to see I have a show tooltip, start attack, heroic strike, and then stop casting. What this stop casting macro does is it allows you to actually queue your heroic strike. So you have a main hand swing, you queue your heroic strike while your offhand is going to hit. That'll guarantee that your offhand hits, gives you more rage. If it hits, it's got a chance to crit. So again, you could have more rage, keep deep wounds rolling on the target, keep trauma rolling on the target. And then you can unqueue it before your next main hand attack if your rage is low, and your offhand attack will essentially hit as if it were a yellow swing. So that's heroic strike queuing in a nutshell. And I do this with my heroic strike macro and my cleave macro. Then we'll get into my Rend macro. And you see in my execute macro, right? I put battle stance into my execute. I do the same thing into Rend because Rend is actually a stance specific macro where you can't use Rend unless you're in battle stance. So I'm going to make sure that on my Fury bar, right, I have the same macro so that if I have to get back into battle stance to pop a Rend up on somebody or a mob, if I'm PvEing, you hit the Rend macro once. Right, I'm just going to be in defense, or I'll be in berserker stance. Hit the Rend macro once, and then you hit it again, and you pop Rend up on somebody. So I have a lot of 2-tap macros because Arms is all about stance dancing and doing it intelligently. So make sure if you're at 100 rage, right, you're not just going to jump stances. You know, use some of that rage before you jump stances if you're able to. Even with tack mastery, right, you don't want to waste 75 rage. And then that gets into our whirlwind macro. Again, if you watched my last video, you know I like to weave whirlwind in when sweeping strikes is down on AoE. You know, even in PvP, same deal. So I have berserker stance macroed into my whirlwind macro because again, right, we're a class that stance dances. So for your specific abilities, you know, you're going to dance into that stance as you use it. Same deal with kick. I'm going to, you know, go into my berserker stance, then I'm going to pummel, and I do the same thing with shield bash. Now intervene is a little bit special, so I have a mouse over macro here because that's just how I like to play. I've played a lot of healers in the past, especially in retail, and I play with mouse overs a lot, especially for abilities like these. So what this is going to do is if you have a mouse over target and they're in your party or raid, you're going to intervene to that person. Otherwise, you could just click, you know, a party member and intervene to them. Again, because you have to be in defensive stance to intervene, we have /cast defensive stance here. So it's another 2-tapper, right? Now, let's go over to my spell reflect macro. And that's also going to lead into my wall macro because I have 2 pretty cool macros here that I think you guys are going to get a lot of value out of. And again, these are all going to be in the description of my video. So, you know, either skip down here and bounce out of the video or watch it all the way through, as I would hope you do. Also, like and subscribe because it absolutely helps me with the YouTube algorithm. So if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, you know, do that. Comment, interact. I appreciate it all. Our goal is 1,000 subscribers, and then we're just going to keep lifting off from there. I've checked off all the other YouTube partnership, you know, check boxes. Just got to do 1,000 subscribers next. And I got enough time to kind of do it now. I was busy, gone for a while, but we're back. Enough of the promo. Let's get into these macros. So spell reflect, you're going to see I have /cast defensive stance, /cast spell reflect, and we're also equipping a sword and a shield here. So the first thing that happens on this macro, I'll blood rage first. It equips our sword and shield. We hit it again, and then it spell reflects. Now you're going to see our wall macro. What this does is it actually shields walls, spell reflects, shield blocks, and equips everything. So you hit this bad boy twice and everything goes off, right? Shield blocks not on the GCD, spell reflects not on the GCD, you know, and shield wall will just pop with you, right? So you're actually getting a massive defensive button here. Let's say you get swapped to an arena or you're in a battleground, same deal. You're not dying if you press this button. This is going to make you the most defensive warrior out there. So this is a huge macro. Make sure you grab it out of my descriptions. Use that. It's really, really good. Then for burst macros, as you know, I like to use blood rage when I'm getting into burst. I throw use 13 into my blood rage macro, and I also throw use 13 into my sweeping strikes macro. And I also have use 13 into my shield block macro, just in case someone's close enough to get cracked by a shield slam when I pop that big defensive button. So those are the macros for Arms and Fury. The only difference with Fury, right, is you're going to have Bloodthirst as opposed to Mortal Strike. Everything else stays pretty much the same. You know, try to keep Start Attack into any ability that is going to, you know, going to help you engage with a mob. Oh, and I didn't go over like my weapon swaps. So you have like I keep my weapon swap macro to get back into battle stance on my shift 2, and you'll see there it puts me in battle stance and it equips my 2 one-handed weapons. I also have the same thing for a two-hander when I do randomly, two-hand. It does happen. So throw my Cat's Edge out there and crack somebody in the head. Then I also have a retaliation macro that I use in this spec and prot, and it's just battle stance and retaliation together. So it'll put you in battle stance and then you hit it again and you retaliate. You're going to see that's a constant theme of a lot of my macros, because you stance so often as an arms and fury warrior. I'm always going to have a stance macroed in to the ability that requires that stance. It just creates a 2-tap situation. And makes it very easy to get abilities off. So I do the same thing for disarm, same thing for hamstring, and again, all those will be in the description below. Now, as we swap over to prot spec, let's get our shield equipped too. Swap over to prot spec. It's a little bit different. So protection warrior in Wrath and in pre-patch. You can actually charge and intervene from defensive stance. You get a damage bonus for being in defensive stance. You take less damage for being in defensive stance. You're not leaving defensive stance, right? It's a cold day in hell for you to leave defensive stance. So you're gonna see I have much less macros in prot. You're actually devastating so often that I keep that in my heroic strike macro. In my devastate macro, I keep my start attack there. Heroic strike is the same Q macro from my arms and fury spec. However, I have even seen people macro heroic strike into devastate. I don't do that. I don't really like that. I don't ever want to be short rage because I'm just like clamoring on one button like a complete spaz. So I try not to do that kind of stuff. But I do keep my shield block or shield slam macroed into my shield block along with my use 13 because I always want to set up big fat shield slams when I'm in prot. These absolutely truck in full brutal gear, and they even hit harder if you're in like full mitigation PvE gear. So if you do decide to like want to PvP on prot, which I do a lot of prot PvP, I'm in full brutal, but you can actually run like PvE gear, stacking block, and you just get big fat shield slams. I'm talking like 10,000 point shield slams. You're going to be hitting 20,000 point shield slams, in Wrath. So you're going to be doing damn on prot for the whole expansion. It's a ton of fun. Yeah, the only macro really that I use is the retaliation macro. It puts me into battle stance, then retaliation, and then I actually click my taunt macro to take me back to defensive stance. This has just always been my defensive stance button. I've always had it macroed into taunt since classic. So I'm pretty comfortable with just clicking my little mouse button here to take me back into defensive stance after I hit retaliation. But again, right, prot, I'm going to have a video coming out soon. I'll go over why you're always in defensive stance much more in depth and some pretty cool talent breakdowns for PvP and PvE. But this is not the video for that. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, checking out the macros. They'll all be in the description. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, comment, engage, join the Discord. Do some push-ups. Do that too. Stay healthy. God bless. Have a great night, guys. Tomato sauce and out.